but with a little practice, it can soon become a pleasurable experience.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hazel and I'm joined by my Barbarian co-host Tanner Reicher, and today we're here to talk about the latest horror movie, Barbarian, directed by Zach Cregger, starring Georgina Campbell, Bill Skarsgård, and Justin Long. But if you want to talk to us about this movie or anything else coming out for the rest of the year and for the rest of time, probably, check back in 2 eons. That's when we'll be stopping. That's a bill we promise right there. But if you want to talk to us about that, you can join our Discord. Link is in the top description. And while you're down there, please subscribe to our channel because we do a lot of movie reviews. And you're also going to want to like this video because you like us. Trust me. I know you do. But Tanner, we just saw Barbarian. We've been very interested in this movie since the trailers dropped a while ago. I'm very interested to hear your first thoughts on Barbarian.
My first thoughts on Barbarian are, when I was coming out of the theater, or when I was walking into the theater, rather, I was asking myself, is this going to be this year's Malignant? And I believe that it is. Barbarian is a very good horror film, little horror flick, has great practical effects, a fantastic twist, and has a good sense of humor about itself.
Yeah.
Which I think are the main three tenets of why I love Malignant so much, and why I enjoy this to a lesser extent, mind you, but still quite a bit.
Yeah, I think this movie is also great. I think it really knocks it out of the park in keeping me surprised. As a horror viewer, I've watched dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of horror movies in my lifetime, and I always know keeping up with what's going on because I'm like, I can kind of smell what's coming. But this movie, I really couldn't because it has such an interesting pace. It plays with time and filmmaking in really interesting ways, and for basically the entire runtime, I was like on the edge of my seat. Yeah, I have no idea what's going next, and that's really fun. Unfortunately, I don't think it sticks the landing, and I think up until the final few frames of the film, I can't wait to see what's happening next, and then the movie just ends. And to me, that kind of smells like, hey, we didn't quite know how to write that last 20 minutes, so instead they just ended it, which leaves me on a sour note, but I was also having so much fun for the entire runtime of the film that doesn't take away from the quality of the film, it doesn't take away from my enjoyment overall, but it does knock it down a little bit for me. Which we'll get to in our spoiler section at the end of this review.
We'll do spoiler free for now, because I think this movie does a great job of setting itself up. You know, setting the groundwork, laying the groundwork for anything to happen.
Sure.
I mean, even from what you see in the trailers, which is woman goes to Airbnb, Bill Skarsgård is there. What's going on? Do we trust Bill Skarsgård? Is he being a weird, creepy guy? There's this weird, mysterious room in the basement. What's going on there?
And that's basically all you know from the trailers.
And that's basically all you know.
I want to give a huge round of applause. I'm not going to clap on camera and make my microphone peak. I want to give a huge round of applause to Zach Cregger, the director of this film, for choosing the trailer the way he did. Because it doesn't reveal anything about what the movie's really about. And going in as blind as possible, which even if you've seen the trailers, you're prepared with it being as blind as possible, is really going to help your enjoyment of this film of not knowing where it's going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this movie, it keeps you on your toes. Like Tucker said, like he was on the edge of his seat. You're waiting for a shoe to drop at any given minute of this film, and it really holds that tension out for a good long while until the thing happens that gets you into the rest of the movie, and then the movie's like, pump the brakes a second, let's rewind it a bit, and it does that a number of times. It's sort of like it'll slap you in the face with a big reveal, and then it'll be like, okay, let's talk about something different real quick. You're like, what a sense of whiplash this film hits you with a number of times,
but in a very good way, because that keeps the tension going, because you always know that we're building back up to something genuinely terrifying. I mean, the tension building in this film, the production design of this basement, of this house, and not exactly knowing where tunnels or staircases are going to lead kept me on the edge of my seat, and because I didn't know what the horror was. I didn't know if there was going to be a creature. I didn't know what the hell was going to be down in that basement, and they really play with your horror expectations until the very end of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even halfway through the film, when you think that, like, okay, we've seen everything we're going to see, there is a sort of side character who says, X thing that's in the basement, I won't say what it is, X thing that's in the basement isn't even the worst thing that's down there. And as an audience member, you're like, what else is down there?
Exactly.
Yeah, it does a great job of keeping you involved, keeping you that interest extended out over an hour and 40-minute runtime. Not extremely long, but I think the perfect length for this and perfectly paced for this,
Yeah.
especially with the I will say sort of out of the ordinary pacing. Like I said,
Yes,
we
definitely.
our attention is pulled in a lot of different areas, locations, and time periods more than you might expect.
And the other thing I want to praise this movie on is that I think the best horror movies operate in a space where if this movie didn't turn horror, I would still be interested in it. We have such an interesting setup of these two characters played by Georgina Campbell and Bill Skarsgård that are just interesting characters. I think they have great chemistry. Frankly, I would watch a possible budding romance / friendship through them. Why not? Cool idea. And the other storylines they set up, I'm like, hey, this is interesting. But then it goes horror, and that adds layers on top of it. I don't necessarily know if by the end of the film, I feel like the things that were set up are played all the way through. There's not a lot of closure to plot lines and story concepts that are set up, which I think is part of my problem with the ending and leads me to feeling like they didn't quite know how to wrap things up in a complete story arc way. But it is a very bold choice to make the story choices they do in this film. I think carried by three core but amazing, excellent performances. Justin Long, fantastic job. Bill Skarsgård, probably one of my favorite performances from him. And Georgina Campbell, who I'd never seen before, absolutely killed it.
Yeah, I agree. I'll talk about the end in generalities, not giving anything away, and then we can give scores, and then we'll talk about spoilers. Yeah, Tucker, I would agree with your sort of assertion that this film doesn't really know how to wrap itself up, as like neatly and interestingly as I might have wished. It puts a good enough bow on things. There's no loose threads hanging really, and we do have an ending. But it's not like a oh my god what a mind blowing ending to wrap up a twisty turny you never know what's coming next film. It's very simple, it's very straightforward how this film ends. Quite frankly,
Yeah, but I do want to compliment this film and get on those performances, but because of how smart the writing is, these are some of the smartest horror characters I've ever encountered.
Yes.
And that really keeps it fresh because I'm so used to seeing horror characters do things that you wouldn't necessarily do, but they're always making the right choices, but unfortunately, it's not enough. And they get put into situations that are pushing them to the edge of the human limits, and I think that's really fun to have that balance.
Yes, Tucker, what would you give the film Barbarian out of 10?
Barbarian coming out of the theater, it's only been 30 minutes since we finished this film. I'm sitting pretty high on it because I was enjoying it for so much of the runtime, and that's going to give me an 8.4 out of 10. I do think that this could have easily been a 9 out of 10, close to a 10 out of 10 if it had wrapped itself up in a more compelling way, as we'll get to in the spoilers. But, god damn, on every production aspect, every acting aspect, concept aspect, I think this is a amazing, amazing horror movie. One for the books.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this a 7.8. I also think it's very solid. All good performances, like you said. The effects are fantastic. It keeps you guessing all the way through. It does some interesting things with pacing. That I think this would make a very fun watch for anyone, any horror fan going into this one. Okay, with our scores done, Tucker, let's get into the spoilers of this film. So if you don't want to know anything, and I highly recommend, we both highly recommend you don't know anything going into this, as little as possible. Leave now, go watch Barbarian, and come back.
Or forever hold your peace.
Or forever hold your peace. Tucker, run me through what your thoughts were going into the twist of this film.
I'm actually curious. What would you say the twist of this film is?
The twist of this film, I would say, is what's revealed with the homeless man towards the end is the full extent of the twist being that our main villain himself, Frank, captures women and then has incestuous relationship with them and their children to create the mother as the main antagonistic force of this film is called.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna say, when you first see the mother as she scrambles up and grabs Bill Skarsgård's head and dashes his head against the wall, that is a what is that? And then we hard cut to, of course, Justin Long singing in a car driving on the California highway.
Burst out laughing in the theater.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic moment. Perfectly executed. From the what the hell is that to now what are we doing? Moments that this film excels so well at.
Yeah, and I think that the sense of place that this house on Barbary Street comes to have across the course of the film, but it is across the entire course of the film, because it doesn't quite feel right at first, and you're learning more things, and I think it's a sense of exploration and discovery as things are revealed across the runtime of the film that makes it so satisfying to stay on the edge of your seat and maintain engagement until the very end, because you never quite know where they're going to go next or what's going to be revealed, because we've got the basement's a little weird, but then there's a door, and then there's a room, and then there's a staircase, and then there's a tunnel and some cages and a woman and a baby thing, and then the old man at the end of the hallway and a bell. Like, so weird that they keep revealing all these things, and the lore around this that we cut back to with Frank, I think, sets us up for this really interesting story about someone who is a serial killer and a rapist and has this really dark history that's been hidden away because no one cares about this abandoned Detroit neighborhood. And I think that's a really interesting way to make it so it's not so easy for the cops to come and help and be really far out of the way. Like, she can't just run quickly next door to get help or scream on the street because all the houses are dilapidated. And I think that sense of place of this neighborhood is really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, just the imagery of this, like, sort of quaint Airbnb house that is owned by Justin Long, as we come to find out, in the middle of these burnt out Detroit homes, is really interesting. You know, that it starts that off-putting sort of feeling when Tess walks out of that door in the morning and she looks around at all the houses. She's like, whoa, this is really, really strange. I do want to say, though, about the mother, as she is called, the monster, I guess. I love how she is sort of depicted in this film. I mean, you have obviously a lot of long, dark hallways in this movie that are barely illuminated by like a cell phone flashlight, and the way she sort of like she slinks in and out of the shadows. You're always waiting for her, like, is she going to come sprinting out? Is she going to become like galloping on all fours? How is she going to come into the frame right now? And the moment after, like I said, when the homeless man sort of warns that she's not even the worst thing in there, and Justin Long is down there, and he's about to go into that one door, and she sort of slowly comes in, like, halfway in, and then she backs back out, and you're like, what is behind this door? What is she, like, afraid to go near? I think that's very well executed. And of course, it's the old man behind the door, and, you know, he ends up killing himself, and then Justin Long gets out of there and stuff like that. So no, it wasn't as like, oh my god, as what it was maybe set up to be, but the setup was still very well done.
No, the setup is, I think, the fantastic part about it. I'm talking about the lore, I'm talking about the sense of place, but it is the fact that it isn't taken to that next level that's kind of assumed. You have this idea that he's been doing this for a long time. You see all those tapes on the wall. He's kidnapped a bunch of women. He's had incestuous relationships with them. There's presumably a bunch of children, but we never see that, and we never know what happened to that. And there's got to be other rooms down here, and the fact that that's not fully explored, I think, is where I would have wanted another 20 minutes on the end of this film to not only wrap up our storylines of the rape thing with Justin Long, which I think is a very interesting part of his character, but it doesn't end up playing into the ending at all, just kind of that he's a bad person and he does like whatever comes to his mind at the moment. I was hoping that there would be some sort of moment where the woman that she was going to work for came to help because she knew that she was in a bad neighborhood. Like, there are things that are set up that we never see drawn to the very end. And I wish that we had more time to maybe have the cops come and find this house and just like have some sort of closure that this place has been discovered. And maybe it's obviously it's a very intentional creative choice to leave it sort of empty and hopeless at the end, because basically everyone is dead and we don't know how she's going to escape, get help, what's going to happen. But I found that to be a little more frustrating than compelling at the end.
It is a very simple wrap up to the story, is that the mother is dead, Justin Long is dead, old man's dead, Tess is alive, and she's gonna get out of there.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, there's nothing, you know, sort of grander than that revealed. And I think it's fine. Like I said, it's a good wrap up to a story that doesn't get too deeply involved in its lore or its implications or its themes or anything like that.
Yeah.
It ultimately is very interested in staying surface level, keeping it simple, and I can respect that.
Yeah, I think the reason that I find that fine, but ultimately kind of disappointing, is because I felt like they were leading to that final closure, to wrapping up all of this lore and these concepts that they had set up, because what they've set up is so interesting, and I want to see the flashback where Frank is digging these tunnels, and it's twisted, but I would want to see some of the victims. I would want to see the extent of the history of this place. But it's kind of glossed over, and ultimately to me feels like something's missing at the end. And because of that, I'm really compelled for the entire runtime of the movie. And then there's a gunshot, and boom, directed by Zach Cregger, and I'm both like, wow, that was a bold creative choice. But I'm like, huh. You really couldn't have written this in a different way. Where does the rest of us go?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think ultimately I'm okay with them keeping it simple. It's up in the air whether if they had explored things further, would that have made the movie better for me or not? I don't know. But as it stands right now, I really dig Barbarian as this sort of surface level horror movie that came out this year that didn't give anything away. It kept me really interested throughout, and it had some interesting twists and turns along the way. And a film that I would recommend to any horror fan. Like I said, this one does get pretty deep in the blood and guts, but it does have a sense of humor about itself as well. So I would say, horror fans, if you're not a horror fan, maybe stay away from this one.
No.
Yeah.
I really do think it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. Not that I was freaking out in the theater, but the sense of tension and unease and unknowing is palpable here in a way that I haven't really gotten from many horror movies, because I'm so used to trailers being very obvious what the monster is, what the situation is, who the characters are. We rarely know none of that going into this. So being able to join these characters in this terrifying scenario and not knowing what's around the corner is what makes this movie so damn compelling for the entirety of its runtime. And I absolutely recommend it to horror fans. I really think that this will stand up there as one of the great horror movies of this year. I mean, this year has been great for horror movies. And this is just another coin for that stack. I'm very, very pleased with Barbarian.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll be watching plenty of more movies in the future. September is a bit of a stacked month, as is the coming months with awards, things, and stuff like that. So we'll be sure to keep you updated if you keep coming back to Backlot Banter. So thanks very much. We'll see you next time. I love Rocky Road.
Do you?
I've had Rocky Road ice cream. What's even in Rocky Road ice cream? Let's talk about that instead of this movie. Chocolate, okay.
Probably some other things, too.
Probably some other things, okay.
Crunchy bits, perhaps?
Crunchy bits,
perhaps?
Rocks? Probably ice cream, too.
Gravel?
I think there's ice cream in there.
Gravel? I'm pushing real hard for gravel ice cream, buddy.
It seems we've come to an impasse.
Ice cream, gravel? Ice cream, gravel?
We have this fight nearly every week.